Hey there, lovely listeners. Welcome to Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani. On this podcast, we uncover the beauty and nature of autism through heartfelt conversations. Let's jump in. Welcome back to another episode of the Uniquely Wired Podcast. I'm your host, Nani, and this is season 2 of the podcast. I am so excited to introduce to you guys our guest for this week's episode. She is an autistic adult, and just a bonus out there, just because I love my pastors and I love my church. She is my pastor's daughter. And I'm just so excited to have her here and for her yes and her willingness. I know this is completely out of her comfort zone, but she definitely did not hesitate to be on the podcast. So, without further ado, I'm going to have Miss Grace introduce herself and just tell us a little bit about herself and what she's doing.
Hi, my name is Grace. As she said, I am a pastor's kid, which is its own can of worms. It's very fun. Uh, I work in childcare full time, almost full time at the church, and I wanted to come on this podcast to give my personal experiences as an autistic adult. Even though I wasn't diagnosed as an adult, I was diagnosed pretty young, so but even so, it's not an easy life being autistic, but at the same time, it's full of adventures and full of wonderful life experiences that I would not take back for a moment.
I love that, Grace. Thank you for sharing that. And I know that you are also in college on top of, you know, working. Um, so how is that? How are you juggling those two things and going to church, being a daughter and a sister?
I I am taking this semester off, uh, just trying to figure out what degree I would like to go in and to just figuring out what I want to do with my life because there's so much I would like to do at the same time, but I want a career that I can do best to my fullest without any, I guess, without getting bored fast. Like I want something that's like fulfilling every day and it's not like a regimen of like, okay, here's a list I have to do. I want to be able to move around and just have, I don't want to say have fun because work, is work, but I just want something I would like to do as like a daily thing.
Yeah.
But throwing throwing autism to the mix, it's kind of like I don't want to overwhelm myself. And so that's another factor on top of everything else I need to put into consideration.
Mm.
Like autism burnout is very real.
Oh my
And
gosh,
there's
wait, because you just touched on something. Can you talk about that? Because I'm sure parents that are listening to this episode perhaps are not aware of what exactly autism burnout is. So, can you give us at least one example, if that's not too much?
it's it's kind of like it can be similar to normal burnout. It's not everyone has their own unique, like burnout. Like for me, it's like I just want to put on my headphones, put on like something to eye mask of sorts and just block out the world for like however long and just listen to like a playlist I have. And some others would probably like silence. But for me, I can't do silence. So it's unique to everybody for sure, but it's like a feeling of defeat in some way. It's not at all. It's not defeat at all. It's just one of those kind of like one of those days where just everything's like mentally like exhausting and I need to put it down. And so for some people, it's like taking a walk, going outside, like listening to podcasts. Like for me, I love a good true crime podcast, but you know, uh, but I just love putting on playlists. Music is always my first go-to. I have like 7 playlists, but yeah,
Wow, that's impressive.
to say I
That's
love
awesome.
variety is an understatement.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, I want us to get into the questions that I have for you. And so the first one is, can you share a bit about your journey, growing up as an autistic adult? And so you were diagnosed, you can tell us at what age you were diagnosed and how it all began from that point forward. If you remember, if not, it's okay. And how has it shaped your life experiences now?
I sorry. I was diagnosed in 4th grade. I actually remember the shift in my parents' parenting style. It was pretty pretty wild. Like they went from like trying to parent me how they parented my older sister who is neurotypical. I mean, she's her own person, so I don't know everything, but you know, me being having autism, it's like everything in the house just seemed to like do a complete 180. I remember I used to have a lot of troubles eating, and so I remember mom putting a mirror there to see how I was eating so I could learn manners, and how everything they changed their discipline a lot as well, but everything just it was just a very big shift. And growing up with that, I was able to learn different ways to like remove myself from overwhelming situations. And but still, one big thing with a lot of autistic people is food. Like that was another big thing for me as well. I have my safe foods. I will proudly say is chicken nuggets and mac and cheese. And another one is like I love french fries. I love french fries. Those are my comfort foods, things that I turn to when there's nothing else I feel like I can eat. And I love being explorative with different things. Like in 4th grade, it was like not even that long after I got my diagnosis, I went to India, and that was a huge culture shock, a huge leap out of my comfort zone that I don't think a lot of people get the chance to do. I got to like try new foods, and and to this day I don't know how I did it, but I was the only one that didn't come back sick.
Wow, that is crazy. I guess you have a very, very good special stomach. Let's just say that. Um, I want to have that tolerance because I'm sure I would have been one of those to come back sick. Of course, just my luck. Wow. So that's, you know what? It's it's interesting what you just said there about how you noticed the shift in your household. At this point, you're already in 4th grade. You were verbal. I do remember you telling me that you were always verbal. So the fact that you were aware of this, and the reason I'm bringing this up is because I feel, and I'm only speaking from my experience as an autism mom of 2 children who are ages 7 and 4. They're very young, but sometimes we think because they're so young, they may not know these things. They may not notice these things. So hearing you say this actually opens up my eyes. And I'm sure it opens up many of the parents, eyes and ears that are listening right now to us. We're almost at 900 downloads. We have people from different countries listening to this podcast. So you are being an extreme blessing and you don't even know it. But I want you to know that you are because, one of my things that I always say on this podcast is that I want to bring on people that are going to bring insightful, resources, um, and just valuable information. And that was really good what you just said that there. So thank you so much for sharing that. Um, Now, what are some common misconceptions people have about autism that you would like to address or clarify? And please be as honest as you could be because that's all I'm
I
saying.
I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that we're I really don't know how to word this, that we're not aware because like a lot of what big companies like Autism Speaks pushes out, and I'm not a big fan of this way of pushing out autism and like I just you fear monger so much. Like I can't even I do not support them at all. Um they push out that we're not aware of what we're doing. We're not worthwhile to get to know. Like I remember listening to one of their ads. It was that an autism diagnosis will ruin marriages, it'll ruin lives, it'll ruin families. It ruins everything, and I don't think that's a lie from the pit. I could tell you that because I don't think autism, like just having autism, like I see and hear things, like my all of my senses are in constant overdrive. That's the only way I can describe it for me and my experiences. So my sense of smell is heightened. Everything is heightened. Like there's certain fabrics I can't wear because it bothers me so much. But like we're very aware of what's being said about autism, and not all of us like it. And so for that's why I love this idea of a podcast is like trying to push out like no, it's not everything it seems. Like I remember asking my mom multiple times like what what was it like for you as a parent? And she was like, I love it. I love hearing how you see the world and how you experience things, you know. Yes, it's been a challenge, but like we wouldn't change it. It's how God made you. And like I don't want it to be quote unquote prayed away. Like it's not it's just so to have those kinds of things said is just like I didn't ask for that. I didn't ask anyone to do that. I mean, at the same time, I didn't ask God to give this to me, but he has it in me for a reason. And it may be this reason right here to spread awareness, and I'm happy to do that. He put me on the higher end of the spectrum for a reason. And that's another misconception is that just because I'm on the higher end of the spectrum doesn't mean I don't have my own struggles. Because this is a quote I live by. You meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism. There's no there's no one size fits all. So I don't want people to be scared to reach out to me, to ask me questions, you know. I would love to educate people. I love it when people ask me questions. Like there's not a lot of like since autism speaks is so loud, it doesn't really give the people with it room to speak into. So it's a very ironic name for an organization when they try to silence the people who are trying to speak out about it and push their own agenda. I I don't mean to talk on for that long. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, don't be sorry. Please. This is your time to shine and speak, honestly. I'd rather you do all the speaking because I'm always talking. Um, so wow, I just loved what you just unpacked there. And we are going to have listeners that obviously do support Autism Speaks. And that's on them, right? We can't change people's minds or what they like, what they believe, what they don't believe. That's just life, right? Um, but I just love how you view the world and your perspective on it. I mean, I could relate. um, when you said about like not praying it away, and I know we had this quick, long conversation a few Wednesdays ago, and it was awesome. It was actually, you guys, my first time meeting Grace, actually speaking to her after 4 years being at the church. But anyways, that's a story for a different day. But we were able to just talk a little bit, and I was telling her a little bit about me and the kids and how, when I first had my daughter and she was diagnosed in the beginning, I will hear a lot, oh, you need to pray this away, like God won't do this. And what does Job say in his book, Grace? This is something that stood out to me. Job says, should we accept good from God and not suffering? And to me it was like, whoa, and not meaning that autism is like, whoa, this thing that's going to make you suffer, but yes, there are challenges that come with it, right, from a mother's perspective. And I'm sure for you guys as adults and the children, they have their challenges, and sometimes maybe you feel like, oh my gosh, I don't want to have this challenge, like this is tough, right? And that's life in general. Okay, I'm going to preach for a second because I really feel led to say this. It's just like, we think everything has to be flowers and cute and oh my gosh, this is beautiful. When we are going to go through things in life, there are going to be things that we experience that we don't want. We get sick. We don't want to be sick, but we're going to get sick. Weather changes. One day is 50 degrees, the next is 80 degrees. Welcome to Philadelphia. But, anyways, you know, it's life. And so I've learned, Grace, to embrace my children. And I've told you this before off camera, that I'm embracing my children, and I've learned to become this advocate. I've learned to push this podcast, which it's almost going on a year. To God be the glory that I've been pushing this podcast. And sometimes it seems like it's growing slowly, but I know it's reaching the people that it needs to reach, right? I'd rather have only 500 listeners than have thousands that are not really listening. They're just downloading the podcast. I want people to actually listen and just learn and accept our children. And Grace, this was a question I was going to ask you, but and it's not on my notes, but I've been talking to a friend of mine's from North Carolina who's a Christian autism mom as well, and we kind of do similar things, bring in awareness, right, to the churches and all the things. And, we just keep seeing parents, especially now being Autism Awareness Month, just like, how can you detox this? How can you do this? It boils my blood. It boils my blood because I'm like, why are we doing this? I personally won't. And I understand some parents feel like, oh my gosh, there has to be a solution to this. Is there anything you want to say about that? I don't know if you've come across this before, but literally it be all over my Instagram. And I'm just tired of seeing it. It honestly breaks my heart. So,
I I do see it a lot actually, and I have had one lady years ago. Like I was sharing my testimony being autistic and everything, and she was like, "Do if you never got vaccinated, you wouldn't have these struggles?" And I'm just like, "Oh geez, no, 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 no. That is not the case." And even in the very, very non-existent way, if that is true, I don't believe it at all that vaccines cause it. I'd rather have autism than be paralyzed from the neck down with polio or struggling with smallpox and measles every other day. But, like, as far as, like, detoxing goes, like, sure, if you want to do that for yourself, you can, but it's not going to make autism go away because it's not in the gut, it's in the noggin. So,
it, it,
I'll
it Oh my gosh. This is like, I think we just opened up a can of worms. So
We
now I
did.
feel like we have to put it back inside. Maybe. Anyways, I just feel like, and of course everybody's going to have their opinion on this, and I'm sure whoever is listening, maybe you agree to this, maybe you don't, but like I've even come across people that just say like, "Oh, join my program, and this is a way how you can reverse symptoms and how you can." I'm like, "Well, first of all, if it's that true, why isn't it free?" You know what I'm saying? Like,
That is
why
very
do
true.
you have to sit there and like convince people to buy these packages? It just cracks me up because I'm like, you're making money off of this.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just bizarre.
it's
Anyways,
sometimes I think like they're personally targeting these desperate people who are like so desperate for like some solution because all these resources are just putting fear into mothers and fear into guardians of autistic children and young adults for no reason. Like, yes, there are so many resources out there. It doesn't have to be what you find on Instagram and Facebook and even TikTok, where you see all of these, like, oh, this blend of essential oils will help everything. And I have nothing against, let it be said now, I have nothing against essential oils. If that's what you do, that's what you do. I love myself good lavender because I like the smell. But at the same time, it's like there's no cure for autism. There's just not. It's something that goes on in the brain. It's nothing that goes on in the joints or the gut or anything. It's nothing. It affects the whole body, yes, but it all comes from the the brain. It really does. There's no blend of oregano and basil that'll help. That goes in pasta sauce, not in essential oils, in my opinion. It,
that's a good
it's
one.
it's just it's I mean, I have nothing against holistic treatments. Like
Mhm.
during a cold when your throat hurts, like a good cup of tea is that's perfect. But at the end of the day, like don't reject the help of other organizations out there who have the resources available. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. I feel the need to say that because I have taken social work classes, and the biggest lead in this kind of area is embarrassment. And I just want to tell all of the mamas or parents out there or guardians, do not be embarrassed to reach out for help. There's they're there for a reason. They want to help you. And as an autistic adult, I want to say, don't worry. Don't be afraid of autism. It can be a very beautiful thing. Just I remember watching videos of this one mama, and she was like, autism is scary, yes, but at the same time I want to embrace this part of my child because I love seeing the wonder and how she sees the world, how she loves to feel the texture of different things, seeing patterns and exploring the world through all of her senses that are like in constant overdrive. So she's trying to understand everything that's being taken in, and just it's nothing to be afraid of. And I can speak from my own experiences and stuff, like it's hard to understand even for me. I can't explain it except from my perspective. And if, you're scared, I want to urge you to read the Bible. It's like, do not fear, for he is with us. I used to have that verse embroidered on a pillow when I was little. I want to encourage moms, don't be afraid to ask for help, not just from our Godly Father, but there is from organizations galore out there other than Autism Speaks. I and if Autism Speaks is the one for you, I implore to do research, but I don't want to stop you. Just don't be afraid, and it's okay to ask for help. I feel the need to say, as someone with it, it's okay. It's okay to ask for help. This it's okay.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Grace. That was so encouraging. Girl, you're making me want to cry. Seriously, that was beautiful. Um, okay, so now can you share with us how has your experience been navigating college, with your challenges, your, possibly getting overstimulated and things of that nature? Have you experienced, any bullying due to your autism or, just your personality? Like, can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can. I'm sorry. It's really hard to describe my college experience because it's been a little bit all over the place. The best experience I had was at Oral Roberts University. The disabilities there are just like the disability department, absolutely amazing. They offered me a put quiet testing room, which I hardly ever used because, as I said earlier, I don't like silence. I can't stand it. If anything's more overwhelming than that, then just silence. I don't get overstimulated as easily as I used to, mostly because I've learned to recognize signs in myself of when it's starting to happen and how to remove myself from the situation. I When I was younger, I did experience some bullying, not as much in college because I found like the amount of people that actually cared are few, and that's fine with me. Like it's if they just want to have me as their friend, I love that. I am socially awkward. I will complain about that. I Sometimes it's just easier for people to approach me than the other way around. So when I had our lovely host here approach me, it was a little surprising because it's like, hi. I absolutely love it. I promise. It's not a big deal. And sometimes I can say 9 times out of 10, my face does not match how I'm feeling. And so I hope I didn't come off as rude visually. I promise. I love that encounter a couple weeks ago. The only bullying I can think of is just really like, is she such a nerd? I'm a self-proclaimed self-proclaimed nerd. I mean, I have most of the periodic table memorized, so I definitely a nerd. Uh, I guess like the only times I really got overwhelmed that I can think off the top of my head is like in big crowd events, like basketball games or chapel. I have a very big love-hate relationship with college chapel. Um, and I guess being a pastor's kid, that sounds very insane, but I I don't like sitting at the front where it's the loudest. Because as much as I love music, I man, I love worship, I promise, but sometimes it's just too loud, too much sometimes. So I do have to step out every now and then when I feel it's just getting too much. I'll just go outside in the hallway, take some deep breaths, and get myself recentered and be like, I'm okay. I'm okay. There's nothing to worry about because, like, I have my own autonomy. I'm my own person. And so I'm like, if I need to step out, I'm sure the Lord will understand. And you'll always see me with headphones. If you see me at church or out and about, I'm always wearing headphones. I just listen to music, be bopping around the grocery store or something, and it's just helps me just kind of stay focused on task and ignoring like the world without coming off as rude or anything. At least to me, I hope I don't come off as rude.
Not at all. I think the fact that you have figured out this is what helps you, that's perfect. You know what? I love that you mentioned about church. Because there are some families that might feel like, oh, my child has a hard time staying still at church, or, whatever the case may be. Um, this is a perfect example. Parents that are listening that do go to church, it's okay if your child has to get up and, you know, get themselves to the foyer or whatever the case may be. Like, it's okay. And just like Grace just mentioned, the Lord understands. He does. Listen, He created you. Therefore, He knew what was going to happen. He knew how you was going to act. So it's okay. He forgave you way before you even did that and stepped out of the church. That's okay. Um, so thank you for pointing that out, Grace. Now, we have two more questions I would like for you to answer. So, in what ways do you think society can better support and accommodate autistic individuals in various aspects of life, including education, since you're in school yourself, employment, since you work, social interactions, church? If you could share those.
I really am not sure about like society as a whole because the culture changes where you live. Like if you were in Europe or Asia, like the expectations are different. I can only speak for the areas I've lived. It's just I can't really speak for society. I just really can't. But I can say like just having a more, I guess, teachable outlook on life. Like I want employers to be open to learning because there are autistic adults who need jobs and it's hard for them to work, you know? And so having bosses and managers who have more understanding and education about just disabilities in general, not just even autism. There's so many adults out there who want to work but can't because they're so limited to what they can do. People just want to toss them aside. It's like not worth it because what can they do for like bosses would be like, what can they do for me? I've had a boss like that before. And what I can say, like from my point of view, is don't keep it secret. You know, like you don't have to tell everybody if you don't want to. Like I don't go around say, "Oh, I'm autistic." I mean, people who want to know, I'll gladly tell. It's not a secret, but at the same time, it's not something I want to parade around. But I want to, for, I just want people to know, like, it's nothing to be ashamed of. If you need accommodations, don't be afraid to ask. Like, just speak up. It's nothing, because by law, they have to recognize that. They have to like say like yes we understand and yes we want to help, like it's just I really don't know how to put it in any other way than saying like I you got to speak up and tell bosses or managers like yes I can work but I'm autistic, so if XYZ happens I know how to handle it, but in case like worst case scenario, here's the best way to help me help you in these kinds of situations. One of the first things I told my boss was, I'm autistic. Sometimes I don't pick up on cues. So if you want me to go print something, just say, hey, Grace, please go print this. And I'll do it. Don't be, it'd be nice if someone could print this, because then I won't pick up on that. I'll be the first to admit that, because I can't pick up on those kinds of cues easy. I'm socially awkward. But even like at schools and stuff, like there are disability centers for a reason. Use them. It's nothing to be ashamed of. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. It's okay to ask for those accommodations. There's nothing to be worried about.
Yeah, and this is not just for like the autistic adults or those that are teenagers getting themselves ready for adulthood. This is even for those parents that are listening that maybe you are afraid to ask for these accommodations. It's very important that you put yourself out there because you know what? People just, they can't just guess your need or your child's need. It's important that you put
Yeah.
yourself out there. And I know sometimes like it's hard, you don't want to parade autism around, but in the world that we live in, sometimes I'm in public and people are just staring at my children stimming, they love flapping their hands in public. My son is a loud, like vocal stimmer. Like if you don't mind noise, then he will be a perfect partner next to you.
Yeah. I
Because he's very loud.
yeah, one of the ways I personally stim is because I was in band, I will hum the chromatic scale. I'll hum the different scales that I had to play over and over on a daily basis in band. And something that I think most parents like I had an individual education plan. And it could be different for different states or even different countries, but it's something that every teacher had to sign and recognize. Like, yes, we read this. It's extended test time. Like, if I needed a separate place to take tests or anything, like, I could do it. I could use those things, and they can't say no because it's their
It's a
job as
legal
teachers.
document.
It is a
Yeah,
legal
it's a legal
document. Very,
document. Yes. It is called the same here. Individualized education plan, which is an IEP. Now, are you now with a 504 since you're an adult?
I am actually unsure. I will have to
Okay.
ask my mom.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's okay.
I've heard that floated around this house when I'm sure there's something, but I just haven't
Yeah.
asked. So,
Yeah, because usually when once you're done with an IEP, you usually move up to a 504. That's usually what I've heard. I mean, I could be wrong, but yeah, that I think everything you just said, it's great. I don't even want to add into it because I think it was just perfectly said and it's okay to ask for help. This is your reminder once again, because I say this a lot on the podcast. Seek help and seek those accommodations. It's very important. Okay, last question. As an autistic adult, what advice would you give to parents, educators, or caregivers who are supporting autistic children, teens, or adults? And I know what I was saying before I continue because I get sidetracked. I was saying, sometimes we don't want to parade autism around, but when you're in public and in these situations and people are just like looking at you, you feel the need to say, well, you know what? They're autistic. They're having a moment. Or perhaps when you go to the doctor's office or a hospital visit for whatever reason, I've had to put myself in that position and say, she's autistic or he's autistic. Like we were just at the urgent care, with Ellie, well, like 2 weeks ago, she was sick, she has strep. And Eliana likes to carry her tablet around. It's a safety thing for her. She loves playing games. She loves online games, loves it. And so the doctor was like, you know what? I didn't say nothing. She was just like, can you take her tablet from her? Because she's not listening to me. And I said, well, she's autistic and non speaking. She's like, oh, I'm so sorry. You know what I'm saying?
yeah. I I get the I get it. Yeah. I
Yeah.
For me, like your daughter's tablet, for me it's my headphones, earbuds, anything to just help familiarize. It's like something familiar. Yes, it's a very big comfort. I have my playlists, and one of the only reasons I have so many playlists, as I said, I have like at least seven that I can remember, is because I don't know what I'd be in the mood for. Like I have an 80s playlist, I have just a mixed playlist of different genres and hodgepodge things, and I have a short playlist of the Piano Guys. It's just wild if you look through my playlist. I guess
But it's what gives you like safety. You know,
yes.
it's what makes you feel good. And I think it's not so much more the words, you like the sound of
Mhm.
it, right? I'm guessing
Mhm.
just the music in it. And
Yes.
you know, that's what helps you.
Mhm.
And that's okay.
And I've asked my mom before, like, is there anything from when I was little that would help me fall asleep? And she was able to put it back when I was still in a crib. I used to have this little lamp that would be on the crib bars. It was like a little aquarium fish thing that would play like little lullabies and spin, and it was just a soft light, something that helped me fall asleep. And the more I think about it, music has always been my comfort from a very young age. It's always been my thing. And for me to be in band for middle school to high school and some of my college, it's just kind of like just music's my thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I love it.
I guess some advice I would give to parents or caregivers is don't be embarrassed of your kid. And I know like some are like, "Oh, I'm not embarrassed." I'm not speaking to everybody, but there's always some that are like kind of look like they want to die inside when their kids start stimming or when their kids making noise or getting excited, like it's nothing to be embarrassed about. That's your child's natural reaction to the world. For me, someone who's vocal, I can say, "Oh, I love this song." But there's some who will dance or like your kid, he'll flap his hands and arms, and that's a totally normal autistic reaction to something that makes him happy. And I can just say, like, by parading it around, I mean, like, I'm saying it to everyone, oh, I'm autistic. Oh, it's the newest trend. I'm autistic. No, it's something I've lived with my entire life. And for bringing awareness to people, like, it's okay. She's autistic. She just needs a moment. I feel like that's a good way to communicate as a caregiver or parent. Just staying calm. Like, she's autistic. She's gonna dance. She's gonna spin. She's gonna flap her arms and hands. It's totally normal. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. And another thing I would say is advocate, advocate, advocate. We cannot expect society to change anytime soon to, you know, help your kids or the I don't know what it is when it's a caregiver, but for your charge, I guess. That's the word. Uh, Advocating for them is so important. Even as a high functioning one, I can remember times in school where I needed to get my parents on board. Like, "Mom, Dad, I need help. They're not listening to me." I had one school who threw out my IEP because it was a private school. Well, I guess that's not like they didn't really throw it out, but like they needed to be they needed their feathers ruffled for me to, need it, I guess. That was a way. It was just a very hard situation, and it was just I needed someone there, and my parents were. So if your child needs you, be there. Advocate for their help, advocate for their needs because there's no one else to do it. It's not going to be grandma or grandpa. It's not going to be Aunt Susan or Uncle Jim Bob. It has to be mom and dad or the caregivers because they need you. They need you to be there to advocate for their needs, to advocate for their help. And I can say proudly that I have parents like I do who advocate for me when I need it cuz now that I'm older I can speak up more. But when I needed them in school, they were there. And so I wanted and really want to put I really want to make sure I stress this enough, the advocacy, because they they need you, and especially in the developmental years, like of being young, you know, like you did with the doctor. You didn't have to, yell or scream or make a big scene, but you needed to communicate that she's autistic. Like I can't, this is her item. This is her comfort. So good job.
I'm like, yay me. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. But Grace, this has been so fun. Um, I'm so happy and grateful that I was able to get you on here. And for your yes once again, um, for just blessing the listeners with your presence and just your perspective as an autistic adult. And so you give me hope, just seeing you and, the beautiful young lady you've turned out to be, and just all the great things you're doing for yourself, and just how good God has been. And how far you've come. I'm sure you've looked back and your parents have looked back like, man, she's come a long way. And so it's just amazing to have you here. So thank you again. This was an awesome episode. And you guys, please don't forget to leave your comment, your review, your rating. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you guys are sharing this. I will leave Grace Instagram information down below. You guys can feel free to follow her. And if you have any questions for her, that maybe you're curious to find out, because you're an autism parent, then please feel free to reach out to her. I'm sure she won't mind that. She's a huge advocate and just very involved in the community. So thank you guys for tuning in and listening to another episode of season 2. We are coming to an end, which is crazy to say. But thank you. Thank you for being here. And I will see you guys again on another episode. Bye. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Uniquely Wired Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and sharing this space with me. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and share. Until next time.